I see. I think this is Chris saying now is MC&C.
Correct.
Oh, he's muted.
No, he's not.
Oh, that's me muted down here. He's MC&C, so
Hey, Michelle, can you hear me now?
apparently not. But you're still.
See if her volume's up.
I can hear a little something.
Can you hear me talking now? I'm still talking. Can you hear me? Let me know when you can hear me. Can you hear anything?
I hear something, but it's not clear. It's low. Now I can hear you.
You can hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me talking?
I don't hear you.
I'm talking. You can't hear it?
It's like it's delayed. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be delayed. But you can
I can
hear me in the
you
headphones
here
pretty
after
clearly.
I've heard. We'll see your lips.
Okay. But you can hear it okay.
Once you change the volume a bit, I think.
Good afternoon. I'm Darlene Heath, MCNC's Director of Community Education and Communications. We're so pleased that you're joining us for the first in a series of 3 presentations on security regarding the security of your digital life as well as that of your organization's infrastructure. The title of today's presentation is Securing Your Digital Assets, which will be led by Chris Bill, MCNC's Chief Security Architect. In fact, each of the 3 presentations will be led by Chris. I've heard some of this presentation, and I'm sure you'll leave with a few new insights. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you being here today. We're going to, as Darlene said, spend some time today talking about securing your digital life. This presentation is not really about security for enterprise assets or enterprise infrastructure. This is really focused on your personal life, your personal assets, and hopefully helpful practical tips that can help you in your everyday digital life managing those assets. Specifically today, we're going to talk about securing your home wireless network, passwords, securing your home PC, mobile device security, and phishing and email security. All right, so before we jump in, if you're anything like me, you've been around security folks for a long time, probably have this impression that the security folks are prone to say no a lot. If you look at this cartoon here, you probably met some security folks that are the embodiment of this sentiment. Sometimes I've heard security departments referred to as putting the no in innovation. It's important that we think about security in terms of balance. And balance is very important. We have to figure out a way to strike a balance between being flexible and open and being able to use systems and use our data and making sure that we've secured them appropriately enough. So if we think about a scale where on one side you've got complete lack of control and the attacker is completely in your system and has control of everything, on the other end of the scale you have things that are kind of locked down to the point of absurdity. Really being on either end of that scale is probably not a great spot to be. You really want to find the right spot for you in the middle. And as we talk about how to secure your own personal information and secure your own personal digital assets, where you will land on that scale as the right thing for you is different for each individual. So as we go through this, you need to think about that. Some of the things I'm going to talk about will be tending more to one side of the scale or the other, and you're going to have to find the right spot for you that strikes the balance for you and how you want to secure your assets. So we're going to start out talking about securing your home network. And I like to use this picture in thinking about what a home computer looks like when it's connected to the internet. You can think of the computer as the person in this picture, and the internet is full of all kinds of devices and individuals who are constantly probing and looking for assets and looking for information. So being a computer connected to the internet is kind of like being the person in this picture where you're constantly under bombardment from the outside. So if we think about how we want to secure those home computers and those home networks, if you look at this picture, the shield in this picture is something that we would call a firewall. It's something that's going to sit in between the internet and the incoming flow of malicious data and information, and designed to bear the brunt of that incoming assault, as it were, and protect the devices sitting behind it. So the first thing we'll talk about here is using a firewall and not connecting your home computers directly to the internet, because the internet is not a safe place. So as you think about how you construct your home network, you want to make sure that you have a firewall there. I would strongly encourage you not to plug your computers directly into your cable modem or the device provided by your internet service provider. You want something sitting in front of those computers to help protect them. The next point I want to make sure to hammer home to folks is that the cable modem is not a firewall. So don't think it's okay to just plug your computer directly into that. You want to have, again, a device in between those two. The next point is sometimes your wireless router can be considered a firewall. It depends on the type of router that you have as to whether or not it can be appropriately configured in that manner. Some wireless routers can serve as that firewall device. Some cannot. So you'll want to be sure to take a look at your wireless router and make sure that if you're plugging it in directly to the cable modem, that it does have those firewalling capabilities. And the last point I want to make on this is to be wary of the internet service provider cable modem / wireless router all in one device. A lot of ISPs will provide you a single device that they manage that also powers the wireless network for your house. From a security standpoint, that's not a great scenario because it doesn't put you in control of your internal network. It puts your ISP in control of your internal network, which is probably not where you want to be from a security standpoint. So again, it depends on where you fall on the scale of how secure you want to be, but just some things to keep in mind with your home network. And if we look at how that home network should generally be designed, if we start here with the internet, and you've got your cable modem that's sitting at your house that's plugged into the internet. That's the stuff that is not under your control. So I'm going to draw a line there, and everything to the left of the line will be things that are not under your control. And what's on the right side of the line is what is under your control in your home network. So this is where you would put your firewall device. That's what would be connected to your cable modem. And then coming off the firewall is where you would have your hub or switch or your wireless router. Most home networks are wireless these days, so the picture I'm going to show here is what would be wireless, but if it's a wired router, same kind of picture would apply. And then this is going to be where you're going to connect your devices, so whether it's your laptop or your mobile phones or tablets or smart TVs or game consoles or refrigerators or toasters or whatever it is you're connecting to the network in your home, that's where those would be connected. And the key point here is that your firewall is what is in between the outside world that's not under your control and your internal network, which is under your control. So continuing on with the discussion of your network, we want to talk about your wireless network and how to get that secured and locked down in a manner that doesn't expose you. So the first thing you want to do is to change the password. And the password I'm referring to here is the password that you use to log into the router itself. When your wireless router comes out of the box, it's going to have a default password. It's really important to change that. And you want to change it because of the existence of a site like routerpasswords.com, which is a site that you can go to and enter in a particular make and model of a wireless router, and it will come back and tell you all the information about the default passwords. So it's very easy for folks to know how to log into these devices very easily if you haven't changed the password. So that's the first thing you want to do, is make sure to change the password to log into the router. The second thing you want to do is to disable something called WPS, which stands for Wi-Fi Protected Setup. This is something that was created by members of the wireless router industry to try to make it simple to set these devices up. The way it works is that there's generally a button on the wireless router that would engage WPS. So you would touch that button, and then there's a 4-digit code that comes with the router. It's usually inside the box or on a sticker that's stuck to the router. And you would go in your web browser and browse to a page that connects you to the router, and you would enter that 4-digit code. And once you do that, then the router proceeds to get set up in a secure manner all by itself. So you don't have to, as the user, don't have to walk through that setup process. It's a well-intentioned process, but the problem is that the manufacturers of the routers have generally done a poor job of implementing these. So if you can think about how long it would take for a computer to cycle through all the possible 4-digit codes, it doesn't generally take very long to do that. There aren't that many possibilities associated with a 4-digit code. And so what has happened, and we've seen stories in the news about this over the last couple of years, is that in many cases the routers have not been implemented in a way that prevents easy guessing of those 4-digit codes. So attackers, either from your own wireless network or from the outside world, can easily connect to that router and just very quickly cycle through all the possible 4-digit codes until they hit the right one. And then at that point, they have control of the router. And they can go in and change configuration settings and take control of your network. So for this reason, it's very important to disable this WPS feature. And one thing I want to stress here is that it's not enough to say, well, I know that setup is not secure, so I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to log into the router directly and do my own setup. Even if you have done that, as long as the WPS feature is enabled, attackers are still able to connect from the outside and try to break in via this mechanism. So it's important to log into the wireless router and make sure that this WPS feature is actually disabled. There's usually a checkbox that you can go uncheck, and it will turn off that feature. And once it's turned off, then attackers are not able to connect to it and try to break in via that mechanism. So make sure you disable WPS. Encryption, you definitely want to turn on encryption for your wireless network. This is really important. And the way you will know that encryption has been turned on generally is if a password is required to connect to your wireless network. I'm sure you've been to public Wi-Fi situations, and maybe you have your own wireless network set up, so you don't have to enter a password. You just click on the network name and your device automatically connects. If that happens, that means that that network connection is not encrypted. And what that means is that anyone who is in physical proximity of seeing the network can actually see all the traffic flowing over the network as well. So for your own home network, you definitely want to put a password on that network, and that will enable encryption. There are different types of encryption that you'll see. WPA2 is the one that you want to use on your home network. There's also WPA and WEP. What I would say about those is that they are better than no encryption. But generally, if WPA2 is available, that is the type of encryption that you want to select for your network. It's much stronger. And really, any router that's been made in the last 10 or so years is going to support WPA2. So that shouldn't be an issue in terms of your router supporting it unless you have a very old piece of hardware. So make sure you turn on encryption. Something else you can look at is MAC address filters. A MAC address is, you'll see it circled here in the picture. It's a unique address that every network interface on a device has that uniquely identifies that particular network interface. So the Wi-Fi network interface in your computer will have a MAC address. The Wi-Fi interface in your phone or your tablet will have a unique address. The wired network ports will also have their own unique address. So one thing you can do in your wireless network is configure it to only allow MAC addresses of devices that belong to you. So if you have that configured, that means that only your devices are allowed to connect to your network. So even someone who would have the password potentially to log to the network still will not be able to log in. Now, this is not a foolproof thing. MAC addresses are easy to capture and change, but it's just an additional layer of security that can help strengthen your own personal wireless network. And here's a couple of other pictures of how it looks on a Windows device or an Android phone in terms of finding out what the MAC address is. I mentioned here disabling SSID broadcast. SSID is the network name of your wireless network. It is possible, usually with wireless routers, to tell the router not to broadcast that name. So it wouldn't show up in a list when you have a device that you're trying to get connected to the network. You'd have to enter it manually. I put a question mark next to that because there's some debate in the security community as to whether or not this is actually an effective security measure or not. I will say it's not foolproof. There are tools that make it possible to see wireless networks that are not broadcasting their name out and to actually figure out what the names are. So it's not foolproof, but if you tend to be more toward the paranoid end of the security sliding scale, that's something you might want to consider for your home network if you want to lock it down even further. And there's a couple of other things here that I won't spend a lot of time on. Guest network, you can look at setting up a guest network at your house. In that manner, if people come to visit, you can have a separate network with a separate password for them. And you don't have to reveal the password for your primary internal network that you use. Many routers support having multiple networks at the same time. The next one, antenna power. There are routers that offer you the ability to lower the power that's going to the antenna, decreasing the signal strength. And what that does is make your wireless network smaller so it doesn't bleed outside of the walls of your house. That's something you would have to experiment with. It's a more advanced thing, but if you're inclined to do that, it is a way to help make your network more secure because it's not extending very far outside of the perimeter of your house. And then the last one I mentioned there is timed access. Many routers support mechanisms that allow you to put rules on times that devices are allowed to connect. So this can be good if you have children and you don't want them on the internet at night. You can write a policy that says that their devices after a certain time is not allowed to connect to the network, those types of things. So those are all things that you can look at on your wireless network. Continuing on with the topic of your home network, put in a plug for OpenDNS, which is a service you can use to help secure your network. And the way this works is that you set up an account with OpenDNS, and instead of sending all your DNS queries to your ISP's DNS server, you instead send them over to OpenDNS's DNS server, and then you're allowed to write rules and policies about what types of DNS queries will be returned. So you can see here in the picture, there's options for filtering levels that you can choose. They have the high, moderate, and low kind of presets there, and then you can click on custom, and you can choose to not allow certain categories of sites. You can also put in whitelists or blacklists for specific websites that you want to block. And they also provide out-of-the-box filtering for any queries going to known sites that serve malware or other malicious types of traffic. So it's a great baseline network security item that you can implement on your home network to help weed out a lot of bad traffic right off the top there. So I recommend that to folks. The way you do it is you go to opendns.com and you register for a user account. Then you log in and you configure your account settings the way you want them, and then you simply configure your computer to point to the OpenDNS servers instead of your ISP's DNS servers. And a couple of tips here. If you actually plug the OpenDNS servers into your wireless router, then those servers will be automatically sent down to all the devices that connect to your wireless router, so you don't have to worry about configuring each device on your network individually. They'll all be protected through that mechanism. And then if your IP address changes frequently from your ISP, they have a piece of software, OpenDNS does, called OpenDNS Updater, that you can install that will make sure that your IP address stays up to date with OpenDNS, even if it changes on a regular basis, and make sure your network stays protected. So this is a great free service that I recommend to all my friends and family to help keep their home network secured. So that's a bit about home networks, and we want to jump over to passwords now. So the information that you're going to see, there's a link down there at the bottom. This information is coming from a business password analysis done by a firm called TrustWave. And you can go there and get the document and read all the details about it. But just at a high level, what they did was in this survey, or in this analysis that they did, they actually obtained a dump of password hashes that were actually stolen throughout various data breaches over the previous year. And they had about 600,000, a little over 600,000 password hashes that they collected. So again, this was not stuff that they created. These were actual user passwords that were stolen during data breaches. And what they did was configure 2 different computers with using basic off-the-shelf hardware. The first one had the configuration you see there. It cost about $1,800, and the second one had that configuration listed there, and it cost about $2,700. So 2 computers, under $5,000 for the hardware, and they used that hardware to do the password cracking on those actual 600,000 password hashes. And what they found were that in the first few minutes of trying to crack the passwords, they were able to crack over 50% of them with that less than $5,000 hardware investment. And then after about a month, they were able to crack almost 92% of those passwords. So that's pretty interesting, telling us that in general, we're pretty poor at creating passwords that are strong and can stand up to trying to be cracked by attackers. So what do we do about that? Actually, before we get into what we do about it, here's some more information coming from that analysis. This is the top 10 passwords that were in that set that they were able to crack. And then they provide some information here based off that analysis of those passwords. And basically what they're saying is that these passwords that we've been taught to create over the years with 8 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters, they're generally not very good at standing up to being cracked. And what they're telling us is that really the thing that helps increase the strength of passwords is not the complexity, it is how long the password is. So how many characters are in the password. That's the thing that really makes it more difficult to crack. So if we kind of extend that and start talking about some good password practices, the first one is what I just mentioned there, is that longer passwords are better. Second one is kind of a duh item, but don't use your username as your password. Hopefully no one is actually doing that. Don't use easily guessed passwords, some of the ones we saw in that password list, the top 10. Do not use the same password for multiple websites. So this is important because we see it happening a lot. If a particular website gets breached and the passwords are dumped by attackers, they're able to take those credentials and connect to other well-known websites. And if you've reused those credentials, then the attacker will be able to access your accounts at other websites as well. So it's important not to reuse them across multiple sites. And the next one is really important. Never reuse the password for your email account. So if you think about why this is, if you think about when you go to a website and click on the I forgot my password link or reset my password link, more times than not, email is involved in resetting your password. They will email you a link or they'll email you some information that you can use to go reset your password. So if your password is compromised at some website and you're using that same set of username and password for your email, then it's possible for an attacker to then get access to your email. And if they have access to your email, then it may be very simple for them to go reset your password at other sites that might be important to you, such as your online bank, brokerage accounts, things like that. So it's a good practice to not share passwords across any websites, but it's a really, really important practice not to share your email password with any other website that you might be using. And the last one on here is using a passphrase instead of a password. So we talked about longer passwords being better. A passphrase is a combination of multiple words. So if we talk about how to use that to construct a good password, I'm going to try to give you an example here. There are many ways to go about constructing a good password. This isn't certainly not the only one, but this is one that I find to be pretty helpful. So first thing you would do is start with a passphrase. So the phrase that's here is tomorrow is not far now. So that's what we're starting with. And then we're going to add a made-up word. So if you have kids, I have found that kids are fantastic generators of made-up words. If you don't have kids, you can certainly make up your own words. But I bet if you do have young children and you just sit down with them and have a conversation and ask them to make up a word, they can give you something good. I have a son who's in kindergarten, and he recently brought home a story that he had written at school, and it was kind of recapping something that happened over the weekend, and he was talking about using a squirt gun. And so what you see there is what was written on the paper for a squirt gun. So that's not actually a made-up word, but in terms of using it in a passphrase, it's not an actual word that exists in the dictionary. So it's really good to use for this purpose. So I've taken my phrase and I've added this made-up word to it, squirt. The next thing you want to do is inject some randomness. So in this example, I've capitalized the first letter of each word. I stuck a special character at the beginning and at the end, and I replaced the A in far with an @ sign, and then I stuck a number on the end, 1. So, this is a really, really strong password. And so you can use this to construct it however you want. You might think it's hard to remember the the capitals versus not capitals, or the special characters, but whatever is easy for you to remember that gets you something in this vein is what we're looking for. So back to the TrustWave password analysis. There's 2 passwords here that they've given us. The first one is typical 8-character requiring special characters and numbers in uppercase and lowercase letters. This is the kind of thing that we've been taught over the years by IT departments that this is a good password, this meets the requirements. And then you have one on the bottom, which is really just a phrase, good luck guessing this password, that has mostly lowercase letters, and then the first letter of each is capitalized. So what TrustWave did in this analysis is use their password cracking setup and estimate how long it would take to crack both of these passwords using their tool. And what they found is that they could crack the first password in just a little bit under 4 days. And based off the rate of guessing, they estimate that it would take over 17 years, almost 18 years, to have the setup guess the one on the bottom. So my question to you is, which one of those can you remember? It's probably not the one at the top. It's probably the one on the bottom. And you can see this illustration highlights the difference in just how strong those passwords are. Now, I'll put a caveat on here and say that it really probably wouldn't take 18 years to crack the one on the bottom. Attackers have ways to optimize the tools that they use for guessing passwords, so it would probably take a lot less time than 18 years to actually guess that password with a password cracking tool. But it's still good for illustrating the point that the one on the bottom is a much stronger password than the one on the top. And you may not think that intuitively by looking at it, just based off of how we've been taught as users over the years. And here's another little cartoon I'll throw in here that helps illustrate this point further. It's from XKCD. Any IT folks that are on the session with us may have seen this before. But what it does is it shows you the password there, the Troubadour and 3, and they've done some replacements there with the letters or numbers for letters, the 0 and the 4. And that password they're telling you gives you about 28 bits of entropy or 28 bits of randomness. And at a rate of 1,000 guesses per second, their estimate is that it would take about 3 days to crack that password. And again, it illustrates the point that that's easy for a tool to guess, and it's not easy for a human to remember. And then the example they give on the bottom is just 4 common words. There's no special characters, there's no capitalization, just all lowercase 4 words. That gets you about 44 bits of entropy, and at the same rate of 1,000 guesses per second, their estimate is it would take you about 550 years to crack that password. So again, it's illustrating the point that that one is hard to crack, easy to remember, and what they tell you at the bottom is that through 20 years of effort, we've successfully trained everyone to use passwords that are hard to remember but easy for computers to crack. So what I want you to take away from this is that longer passwords are better. Anytime you have the opportunity to create a longer password, you should do that. All right, so let's talk about password managers for a minute. Password managers are tools that are essentially wallets or safes for passwords. You store your passwords for external accounts inside of the password manager, and it keeps it safe and secure. And when you need to log into those third-party sites or external sites, you go to the password manager, pull it out, and then use it to log in. So as you're thinking about how to use a password manager, you have to answer some questions. The first one being, do you want your password data only to be stored locally on your device, or do you want it synced up to the cloud? That's a question that you will have to answer based off where you fall on the security sliding scale. If you're ultra paranoid, you may not want your password data being stored anywhere other than on a machine that you control. There can be a lot of convenience to be gained in having those passwords stored somewhere else in a third-party system, as long as it's done securely. So if you may be a little further down the scale and thinking that it's worth the trade-off there in order to gain that convenience. So that's the question that you'll need to answer for yourself. You also have to think about, do you want login forms automatically filled in when you go to a website? Are you the kind of person who wants to open the password manager yourself, pull out the password, and then enter it into the website? Or do you want a service that will automatically do that on your behalf so you don't have to bother with that extra step? There are password management services that provide browser plugins that can do that automatically, and mobile apps that will help do that for you when those passwords are needed out of the vault. So that's a question you'll have to answer as well. You ought to think about, do you want mobile device support, or you're only going to be logging in from a PC type screen? And so what I'm giving you here are a couple of links to some articles about password managers and reviews on different password managers. So you can go out and check those out and see if there's one that makes sense for you. Password managers are important when we think about that previous good practice of not sharing passwords across websites, because what that means then is you need to have a separate password now for every website. So for most folks, we're talking about tens or dozens of passwords that they're having to keep up with and remember, and it's hard to remember those. So the password manager would be the way that you would securely keep track of all those passwords and be able to manage them effectively. If you do use a password manager, you need to make sure that your master password is very strong and that you can actually remember it. Because if it's a weak master password, then if the attacker gets access to that, then now they've got access to all the accounts that you have in the password manager and can potentially abuse those to log into those external services. And if you forget the master password, then you could be locked out of all of your external accounts. So if you're going to use a password manager, it's important to keep those things in mind. And the last point here is that I would encourage you to use multi-factor authentication anywhere that you can when dealing with a password manager. And so that's a nice segue into talking about what multi-factor authentication is. As the name implies, there are different factors that you can use when logging into a website, and multi-factor means that you have more than one of those factors involved. So the factors that we generally have are something which would be a username, a password, a PIN, some piece of information that you know or remember or have written down somewhere. Something you have are things like tokens, USB keys, maybe a particular computer or a phone, or devices that belong to you and have been registered. So you have to have that particular piece of hardware or device in order to complete that login process. And the last factor is something that you are. So this would be biometrics, things like fingerprints or retina or iris scans. Those are things that fall under the something you are category. So again, multi-factor is when you're going to use more than one of these types of factors to actually complete a login process. Now, most folks are familiar with multi-factor authentication, whether they know it or not, and have been using it for many, many years. And the common example we give when talking about multi-factor authentication is an ATM. So if you want to withdraw money from an ATM, you have to present multiple factors in order to authenticate yourself to that device and actually get money out. The first one being something that you have, which is the bank card that you enter into the ATM. And the second is something that you know, which is your PIN number. So you can't get cash out unless you have both of these factors, which is generally a good thing because we don't want someone who finds your bank card, if it's lost or stolen, to be able to enter it into the ATM and start getting money out. And we also don't want someone who may have overheard or seen your PIN be able to use that to get money out without actually having your bank card as well. So most folks are very familiar with this concept of multi-factor authentication. Have been using it for a long time and just haven't been using it with computer logins. So I would strongly encourage you to take advantage of multi-factor authentication everywhere that you can in your accounts dealing with your personal life, your banking website, your email sites, any website that you interact with that supports two-factor authentication or multi-factor. I would strongly encourage you to make use of that. All right, so quickly reviewing passwords, things we want you to remember. Longer passwords are better. Hopefully you remember that. It's not a great idea to reuse the same password across multiple websites. Using passphrases instead of passwords, that goes along with getting your passwords longer. Using a password manager is a good thing and helps you actually have those multiple different passwords across different websites. And then using multi-factor authentication, that's something we definitely want to take advantage of when we have the opportunity. So that's it for passwords. And we're going to move right along here and start to talk about how you actually secure your home computer. So there's a gentleman by the name of Brian Krebs, and you can see his website down there at the bottom, krebsonsecurity.com. Brian Krebs is an independent investigative journalist who focuses on security and privacy issues. So if you have even a passing interest in information security and privacy, I would encourage you to check him out on his website. He writes a lot of really interesting articles and does some really good research. He actually breaks a lot of the stories about data breaches that you see in the news. Generally, he's one of the first ones to know, and is often notifying companies that they've had a data breach through his investigative work. So he's got something he calls the 3 rules for online safety. The first one is, if you didn't go looking for it, don't install it. So that means if you're browsing on your computer and you get a pop-up that says, hey, you need to install this plugin, or you need to download this screensaver, this application. If you weren't actually intending to install that, it's generally a good idea to not click along and complete the installation. So that's the first rule. The second rule is, if you installed it, you need to update it. So if you install third-party software on your computer, you really need to make sure that you keep it up to date, because all software contains vulnerabilities, and as time goes on, those vulnerabilities become known and become people start to exploit them. And so you want to make sure that you're keeping up with any patches or updates that have been released to fix those security vulnerabilities in software. And his third rule is, if you no longer need it, remove it. So this, if you had to install some software for a project you were working on or a class you were taking, and that event is over and you no longer need that software, you should remove it from your computer. Most people don't do that, but if you remove it, then it can't be used to actually infect or exploit your computer. So it's a good idea to make sure that you take off stuff that you don't need anymore. All right, so we're going to go through some more tips for your home computer and ways to lock that down and make it more secure. And the first one is, don't make your user account administrator. So if you have a Macintosh, you can go into the system preferences and go to the users and groups, and there's a checkbox there. When you click on your user account, you can uncheck it that says allow user to administer this computer. And what that means is that your user account that you're using on a day-to-day basis doesn't have the ability to act as administrator. So it's a lot harder for you to pick up drive-by malware from casual browsing. It's a lot harder for malware to infect your computer because the user that you're logged in as doesn't have the rights to have complete control over the computer. Doesn't mean you can't be infected, but it makes it a lot harder. And on Windows, you can see the screen here. You go into the user account settings and you set the user account to be a standard account instead of an administrator. And it's generally a good idea to have separate user accounts and administrator accounts. So a lot of people just create one account for their computer and use that, and they need to make an administrator because they need to install something from time to time. If you create 2 separate accounts, when you need to do that administrative action, you can log in as the admin user, perform whatever the action is, and then log back out. But most of the time you're running as a standard user, which doesn't have those rights to actually take control of the computer. So again, it makes it much harder for your computer to become infected with malware if you operate this way. And it's pretty simple to do. So next, speaking of malware, we'll talk a little bit about malware. There's a lot of talk in the news about antivirus not being worthwhile. Is it a waste of money? It doesn't really protect your computer. And to a certain extent, that is true. For a long time, people thought antivirus software was the end-all, be-all of security. And if you had antivirus on your computer, that it was secure. What we know is that statement is not true. That doesn't mean that antivirus doesn't have a place, and it's not important in protecting your computer, but it does mean that if you're relying solely on that you could find yourself in trouble. So what I would say about malware or antivirus software is, the question is it going to completely protect your computer? The answer to that is categorically no. Should most people run antivirus software on their computer? I think probably. Should you spend a lot of money on antivirus software? Probably not. And here are some things that you can do that are relatively inexpensive from an antivirus perspective. So the first one we talked about already, which is OpenDNS. I would strongly encourage you to do that. That doesn't mean if you run OpenDNS on your network that you don't need antivirus on your computer, but it certainly is a helpful additional layer that can catch a lot of things and help make your environment safer. The second one is if you run Windows, Microsoft does have a built-in antivirus capability called Microsoft Security Essentials, and you can follow the link there to learn more about it. If you don't have that enabled on your Windows PC and you're not running any other antivirus software, that's certainly one I would strongly consider. It is not the most protective antivirus software. There have been comparative tests that show that one, oftentimes lags behind competitors in terms of having updated signatures for new malware, but it is one that is optimized for the Windows platform, and it does perform very well. It won't bog your system down, and it generally does an okay job from a defense perspective for home PCs. The third one there is Malwarebytes, and Malwarebytes actually has two flavors. It is Windows only. The first option they offer is a free option, and you can download that and run it as kind of a standalone scanning tool. So it's not going to run all the time on your computer, but you can launch it and tell it to scan your computer, and it will go through and find any files that are infected. And then the second option they have is a paid option, but it's pretty cheap. It's something like $25 a year, I think. And that is one that works like traditional corporate antivirus, which is running all the time. And when you download new files and open new files, it will scan them in real time before they're actually opened on your PC. So for just a tiny bit of money, you can get really good protection using the Malwarebytes software. And they generally have a very, very good reputation as being one of the best in terms of identifying malware and quickly identifying new pieces of malware and finding things that other vendors miss. So if you're looking for one, that's one that I'd highly recommend to folks, both the free version and the paid version. And then lastly, if you have a Mac, I recommend Clam AV, and in particular the Clam X AV, which has a nice, pretty GUI interface for users. This one also is not one that provides real-time protection, and you have to fire it up and tell it to perform a scan, and it will do that. This one, too, often lags behind in terms of getting updated coverage, but that's generally not such a huge problem for Macs because they don't have the risk profile in terms of malware that Windows machines do. That's not to say that they're immune to malware. They're certainly not, but they're not as much of a risk currently to become infected as Windows machines are. So I generally recommend that to folks. There are other commercial options as well that you can download. Sophos, McAfee, Symantec, they all provide Mac clients as well, but I wouldn't spend a lot of money on those personally. So that's malware. I'm not going to spend much time on these because we need to move on to some other stuff to get through all the things we want to talk about. But I will mention this site, VirusTotal, which allows you to upload files and scan them, or you can put a URL in and it will scan a website and tell you if the site contains malware. And really what it's doing is checking against a database that compares about 50 or so antivirus vendors. So you can put in a file. This one is an Adobe Flash PDF file that was uploaded and scanned, and they looked at all the different vendors and found that 29 of the 49 vendors detected this file as malware. So it's a great kind of clearinghouse for all the different antivirus vendors, and you can check files and websites against it. Okay, so still sticking with home computers, we want to talk a little bit about applications. This is from a report done by GFI for the most vulnerable applications in 2014. And you can see the list here: Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Firefox, Flash Player, Java, Adobe Air, Adobe Reader, Adobe Acrobat. These are the most vulnerable and most exploited applications that GFI encountered in their survey last year. If you think about the applications that you probably have installed on your home PC, it's probably these. There's a reason that these are the ones that are most vulnerable. They're also the ones that are most widely deployed, and so they're the ones that are most targeted by attackers. So here's some information again from a TrustWave report. What they found in this report was that 78% of the exploits that they saw in an enterprise environment were actually exploiting Java. So Java is a very, very dangerous, highly exploited piece of third-party software that if you have on your computer, you need to be careful of. They also found that 85% of the exploits that they saw were taking advantage of third-party plugins like Java, like Adobe Flash, Acrobat, and Reader. So when we're considering applications, how do we protect our PCs from them? The first thing is, as we mentioned earlier, you want to remove applications that are not needed. The second thing is you want to keep your software updated with security patches. That applies both to the operating system, and for that, I would recommend just turning on the automatic update function in Windows and just letting Windows download the updates in the background and install them automatically. You can do the same thing on a Mac, and this is what it looks like. You just check the boxes there to automatically update and install. So that'll take care of your operating system and your software provided by the vendor, the OS vendor. And then for those other applications like Firefox, Chrome, Java, etc., how do we keep those updated? So the first thing is many of these applications have auto update features that you can, when you install it, you can tell those applications automatically download and install security updates. The thing I would caution you with that functionality is to make sure that you restart the apps often, because what can happen a lot of times is the application can know that it needs to update, it can download the update, and it can install it, but it won't be fully installed until the application is closed and restarted, and it can load all those new libraries that have been installed. So if you are doing auto update, make sure you're closing your applications on a regular basis so that the updates can be applied. And then I'll mention this tool called Secunia PSI, which is one I recommend to folks. And what that does is you install it and it will scan your system and find all the applications that you have installed, and it will go out and check its database, which they keep regularly updated to let you know if those applications are up to date or not. So this will check for third-party things like Java, like Flash, like Google Chrome and Firefox. There's all those vulnerable applications we just mentioned. It will check and it will alert you if those things are not current and they're not updated as they should be. So it will let you know that, and then you have the option to go out and download those updates and install them. So it's actually a really good tool to help you keep your machine up to date and help you make sure that all that stuff that's on your system is actually being maintained. For web browsers, it's very important to keep those updated. Remove any unneeded plugins. Mozilla for Firefox has this site called Plugin Check that you can actually browse to, and it will tell you if your plugins are updated or not. And you can, right from that site, click through and get the latest updates. A couple of helpful websites to look at: URL Void and Site Advisor. These are sites that will help you verify the reputation of sites that you're browsing to and let you know if you're headed towards a suspicious website. So you can check those out and see if they might be useful for you. Some other helpful security plugins for web browsers are listed there. They can do the same type of thing of blocking tracking activity to help protect your privacy, and they can also alert you when you're heading to a website that might be suspicious, or you maybe want to think twice before actually visiting. They'll give you an alert on that before your browser connects there. So you can check those out, see if they might be useful for you. This is just a screenshot of what the Firefox plugin check looks like in the URL and Site Advisor sites. I'm going to skip through this in the interest of time. Make sure you run a firewall on your computer. Both Macs and Windows have firewalls built in. You can see their settings for how to click on those and check and make sure that they're turned on. But I would encourage you to make sure that those are turned on your devices. And then talk about encrypting. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You can browse to these articles and learn a little bit about the built-in tools for both Windows and Mac for encrypting your data, help keeping your data protected there. And then some other helpful tools, Disk Utility and AxCrypt. I'm going to skip through those. You can read about those. One thing I will mention, though, is that securely deleting your data. This is particularly important if you're going to let someone else have your computer, or you're thinking about selling your computer or trading it in. It's important to make sure that your data is securely removed. So this AxCrypt tool has a way that you can, as you're deleting files, to choose shred and delete. And that will make sure that the data is securely removed and cannot be easily recovered. The Mac has a similar thing. You just delete your files as you normally do, but instead of emptying your trash, there's this option in the Finder called Secure Empty Trash, and it will make sure that the data is securely deleted so that it cannot be easily recovered. And there's some additional tools you can look at for wiping devices: Hide Eraser, CC Cleaner, excuse me, and DBAN. Those are all helpful tools that you can check out if you're thinking about getting rid of a computer, making sure that you clean it securely before you get rid of it. Backups, there's some information here that you can look at for how to back up data locally as well as in the cloud. Thing I'll mention here between the file sync services and the backup services, be careful with file sync services because they're not really necessarily backups. If you have data that gets deleted off your home PC for some reason, it's probably also going to disappear from the sync service because that's the job is to synchronize the environments. So it's important, even if you have those sync services, to also have a separate backup service that you can go pull from if data gets corrupted or goes missing. And the ones listed there at the bottom, Mosey and Carbonite, are some of those cloud-based backup services that you can check out. Traveling safety, if you're traveling or working in a coffee shop or something like that, don't leave your computer unattended in public. That's important. I don't think the guy on this picture is going to have a problem with the computer walking away. But it's something you want to make sure you do so your computer doesn't go missing. Don't leave your device or your bag visible in your car. If you're going to run in somewhere, just throw the computer or your laptop bag in the trunk so it's out of sight, out of mind. That's a helpful thing to do. And then lastly, don't leave your device or your bag visible in your hotel room. This is something a lot of folks don't think about, but there's a lot of people coming in and out of your hotel room during the day, even when you're not there. So again, out of sight, out of mind. Put it away in your bag. Put your bag in the closet. Just don't have it sitting out. It's less likely to be messed with if it's handled that way. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about computing in public. We talked about ensuring that your Wi-Fi traffic is secure when setting up your home wireless network. Same thing for public Wi-Fi. If you didn't have to enter a password to connect to the network, then anyone else connecting to the network can see all your traffic going across that wireless network. So that's why it's important to, if you connect to those public Wi-Fi networks, use a VPN so that your network traffic can't be viewed, or at least make sure that you're using HTTPS so that the traffic is secured. There's an article there about different VPN service providers you can check out. If you travel a lot and use public Wi-Fi, I'd strongly encourage you to take advantage of a VPN. The other thing you can think about is using the mobile data network. So instead of connecting to public Wi-Fi, use the hotspot feature on your phone, or use a MiFi type device. That way your traffic can't be viewed by those sitting around you. So that's a quick review of the things we've talked about for securing your home computer. And then again, the 3 rules for online safety from Brian Krebs. Those are important, so keep those in mind as you're thinking about securing your home PC. For smartphones and tablets, you want to make sure you turn on a passcode. And there are some ways to make login easier if you do turn on a passcode. Android has this thing called pattern lock that allows you to draw a picture instead of entering a passcode number. There's also facial recognition where the phone can use the camera to look at your face and only unlock it if it's your face. It's a nice feature of Android that you might want to check out. For iOS, there's also Touch ID now, which allows you to use your fingerprint in some of the newer iPhone devices. But this is a trick you can also use if you don't have Touch ID, or even if you do and you want a passcode longer than 4 digits. By default, this uses a 4-digit passcode. If you want something stronger than that, you can turn off the simple passcode there in the passcode settings. But if you do that, your passcode screen now becomes this keyboard that's a lot more difficult to type into. But a little trick that you can use is if you turn off the simple passcode, you get this keyboard. But if you only enter numbers as your passcode, then you will continue to see the login screen on the right. So you can use that to have a passcode that is only numbers and gives you the nice, easy to enter screen on the right, but can be 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 numbers instead of being limited to only 4. So that's a little trick I like to tell folks about that can help increase your passcode security for your iPhone device. Don't jailbreak or root your device. Most of these mobile devices are relatively secure unless you do that. If you do that, then that's where you're likely to have your device compromised. So I'd strongly encourage you not to do that. Also, particularly for Android, use only known app stores. For Apple, that's not a problem unless you jailbreak the device. For Android, there are lots of app stores that you can use, but it's generally better from a security standpoint to stick to the more well-known ones such as Google Play or Amazon's App Store. And then lastly, I also encourage you to use the Find My Phone services. Apple and Android, and I think Windows Phone all have these services that allow you to log in and track where your phone is, and you can remotely wipe them if they're lost or stolen. So I encourage you to take advantage of those. Just real quick here, we're going to talk a little bit about phishing and email security. I think most folks know what spam is, and phishing is emails that are designed to lure you into revealing information, giving up passwords or bank account information or things like that. And spear phishing is a term that's used when we're targeting specific individuals or specific groups. So it's a phishing message that's highly targeted. That's what spear phishing is. This is just some examples of spam. I'm sure you've all seen this in your email. If you haven't, then I would like to learn your secret for avoiding spam. But generally, it's these types of messages that you didn't ask for. They're junk emails. They want you to click on something. And usually, if you click on them, you end up at a site like this that's wanting to sell you pharmaceuticals, or in some cases, they're going to try to install malware on your computer. So talk about phishing a little bit. This is from a study that Google did, and they found that the most believable phishing pages designed to steal your information were able to trick users about 45% of the time. But even the most obviously horrible phishing pages that were very, very clear to most people that this was a scam, they still worked 3% of the time. So if you send out enough volume of these messages, you know that this is why attackers do it, because they're able to get valuable information out of it. And the other interesting thing they found in this study is that 20% of the accounts that were compromised were actually accessed within 30 minutes of the phish taking place. So the attackers are moving pretty fast. So it's important to have these measures in place to help protect you from phishing. This is a phishing email that's pretty poor. It's pretty easy to look at this and say, yeah, this really didn't come from Bank of America. This is one that is quite a bit better. It's designed to get you to click on that click here link, and that will take you to a web page that is not American Express but looks very much like American Express, and get you to enter your username and password. And if you do that, then the attackers can now log into your American Express account. This is one from AT&T. This is an effective one because it tells you that your bill is $1,700 and log in to check it. So most people are going to see this and think, oh my gosh, $1,700, I need to log in now. So if you get a message like this and you're worried about it, you need to open your browser and type in att.com. Don't click on the link that's in the email message. And this is one we actually got here at MCNC that was sent to our CFO, appeared to come from our CFO, sent to a member of our accounting staff, telling them they wanted them to send them information on how to do a wire transfer. And you can see here that this actually didn't come from an MCNC account. It actually came from a compromised account belonging to TampaBayWineandFood.com. And it appeared to come from our CFO, Patricia Moody. But if you reply to that message, it would actually go back to this Yahoo.com account. So this is, one way you can know and to look in the headers and figure out that this is not a legitimate message. So just be aware of that as you get these messages. Some safe email practices. Hopefully you're aware of most of these. Be aware of suspicious looking messages, particularly things that are pressing you for urgent information. Don't click on links that are in email or instant messages that you did not request. Be careful when opening attachments to emails. And as we mentioned earlier, important websites, you want to access those directly, not through a link inside of an email. All right, so here's the most important things I want you to take away from this session today. The first one is that you need a longer password. And the way we remember that is longer is stronger. So keep that in mind. 12 to 15 characters is the minimum that I would recommend today, really as long as you can stand. even if you can't get complexity in there, that's okay. The thing that's important is length, not complexity. So everywhere you have the opportunity to do that, I would encourage you to do it. The second is use multi-factor authentication everywhere you can, whether that's getting a text message or using an app like Google Authenticator, or a dongle or a token that might be provided to you. Anywhere you have the chance to do that, you should, because that makes logging in eminently more stronger and protects your information substantially. Make sure you patch your systems, your home computers, and don't forget the applications. So it's not enough just to patch the operating system. You need to patch those browsers and Flash and Java and plugins and all those things that you install as well. And lastly, lock your mobile devices. Mobile devices today are, for the most part, reasonably secure. The biggest threat you have to worry about, honestly, is them going lost or stolen. And that's where it's important to have a lock on them, so that if they do go lost or stolen, someone can't pick it up and just start using it and start accessing information. And then you're able, through those Find My Phone services, to remotely wipe them. So if you're going to take away anything from the session today, those are the 4 things that I would encourage you to take away. If you're not doing them now, you should do them ASAP. And with that, that's the end, and we'll stop and see if we have any questions.
I haven't seen any questions come through. This is Darlene at MCNC. So perhaps you might have been a little shy, or maybe I just haven't seen the question on the link I'm watching. If you do have any and they have not been answered, feel free to email Chris or myself. And instead of asking you to write it down, just go back to one of the emails that I sent out earlier inviting you to attend today, and find our email addresses there. We look forward to hearing from you, your comments, your questions, and as we stated earlier, there will be 2 additional sessions, quite different from today's, and that information's on our training website as well. We will follow up with you, and in case any of you are wondering whether the slides will be available, they will be, and we'll put them on our website and send you out a message to let you know that they're there. That's all I have. I still don't see any additional questions, and all of us here, appreciate the hour that you have spent with us today, and we hope that it's been a great experience for you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you the next time.